Welcome back, everyone. We're here today, brand new Training Thursday. Today's going to all be about, though, overcoming fatigue, developing a state of peak energy, something that you can look forward to every single day of your life. I'll tell you right now, my life today is radically different than it was before the age of 27. And the reason is that I did not know this whole theory around allostatic load, or allostatic load is no longer a theory. But back then I was reading a book by Hans Seeley that literally changed my life. It's what enabled me to understand why I used to relapse so often, meaning like I was sick from 17 years old to 20, really sick, like immune system totally dysfunctional, autoimmune diseases, Addisons disease, type 2 diabetes, couldn't regulate my blood sugar, couldn't fall asleep, terrible allergies, POTS syndrome, mast cell activation syndrome, you name it, right? Body was not regulated. It was completely imbalanced, couldn't control my HPA axis, my adrenals, immune cells, white blood cells, etc. Now, then I would start to learn about nutrition. I was deep into nutrition, start to get a little bit better, would see practitioners, natural health practitioners, follow their protocols, feel like I was starting to get well, and then a few months later I would relapse. Then I would try the next thing and start to get pretty well, and then I would relapse, meaning like I would just go back to being absolutely exhausted, walking around like a zombie, flu-like symptoms, couldn't sleep, but I was tired and wired. I was tired all day long. Grogginess, never felt like I woke up, had brain fog, joint pain, fibromyalgia, and then at night I couldn't fall asleep. I mean, it was the worst of the worst. So here's the thing though. I realized eventually this thing called allostatic load that I was not managing. It goes back to why I wrote my book, The Rain Barrel Effect. Why did I do that? Because allostatic load is the rain barrel effect. It's just another terminology for it. But it's very interesting though, because allostatic load is a little bit different than the rain barrel effect. And if you don't know what the rain barrel effect is, it's basically over our years, over our life, we begin to accumulate heavy metals like aluminum and fluoride in our body and chlorine and arsenic and mercury, et cetera, right? But we also start to accumulate pesticides and glyphosates and benzenes and all sorts of other chemicals. There's over 100,000 man-made chemicals now in the environment, and we accumulate those. But we're also exposed to car exhaust fumes, and we're exposed to stress in our daily life and blue light at night, all these things. Well, they just kind of gradually fill up the rain barrel. And then as we age as well, we start to lose our reserves of our vitamins and our minerals and our enzymes and all these different things. And then the rain barrel fills up further because it can't deal with the onslaught of life. And then eventually that rain barrel overflows. That means the water overflows the top of the rain barrel. Now, we kind of felt the symptoms maybe creeping up. A little less energy, a little lower mood, not as much ambition, not as much drive, lower sex drives, not as much endurance or ability to work out in the gym. You get tired more often, more inflamed. Okay, like those are the symptoms. Then all of a sudden the rain barrel overflows, and now what do you have? An autoimmune issue, you have type 2 diabetes, you've got cardiovascular issues, you have high blood pressure, you have migraines, you have any one of these things. Well, that's the rain barrel overflowing. But you had the symptoms before that. We weren't necessarily taking care of those, and then we end up with a disease diagnosis. Well, the disease diagnosis didn't happen overnight, right? That's overflowing the rain barrel. The good news is this: if you empty your rain barrel, you can reverse disease. Every person with every type of disease has done it. That's the truth. And so you can say, well, my disease is this, that, and the other thing. I get it. I understand. I had so many diseases, so many. And yes, they are a part of my genetics, but I don't have them today. So how did I do that? I worked overtime to reduce and empty that rain barrel. And that allowed me then to reduce allostatic load in my body. My body could then do what it knows best, is to begin to heal itself. Now, what I want to share with you though, is allostatic load in terms of stress. If you're tired right now, there is something stressing your body. GI, so gut issues, heavy metals, stealth pathogens like mold, parasites, Lyme, viruses, those things could all be weighing down the body, and also overall exhaustion. And so what do? Well, you need to be able to build yourself back up. Like that's what it's all about. That is managing allostatic load. So allostatic load, it refers to the cumulative burden of chronic stress in life events. That's literally how it's defined. It involves the interaction of different physiological systems at varying degrees of activity. When environmental challenges exceed the individual's ability to cope, then allostatic overload ensues. That's the definition. What does that mean? Okay, so every time you get stress, I've talked about this before in the show, your body produces something called catecholamines, and it produces certain neurotransmitters, and it produces glucocorticoids. You don't need to know really any one of those things, but know this. You probably heard the word adrenaline before, right? So adrenaline is produced at the start of stress, basically norepinephrine, and that adrenaline is produced in the adrenal medulla, so in your adrenals. You probably heard about that before, right? Then our body gets another loop from the hypothalamus in the brain to the pituitary gland, down to the adrenals, it gets a signal. Okay, now we're gonna produce cortisol. It's a glucocorticoid, which means we're gonna start to get all revved up. We're gonna bring sugar into the bloodstream, whether you ate any carbs or not, to be able to get in that fight or flight, to have fuel for fight or flight. Okay, that's what it does. Now, in terms of neurotransmitters, we have noradrenaline and we have norepinephrine. That's gonna get things, heart rate accelerated, right? We've got that, we start to sweat maybe a little bit, cold hands and feet, like any one of those things can happen. So that is the start to the stress cycle. That is not good if we are chronically stressed. It leads to then the exhaustion, which leads to basically burnout. And Hans Selye was really the, I don't know if you want to say like innovator, father, godfather of this. He wasn't the first, but he really put pen to paper. There's that Boston accent that hardly ever comes out, but there it is right now. In 1956, he wrote a book called The Stress of Life. Now, I wasn't around in 1956, but through the beauty of books, I got to read that many years later. Probably read that right around 2005, 2006, right around there, before I met my mentor. So I was reading hundreds of books a year. And you have to understand, like, I was obsessed with getting well. So people are like, how do you read hundreds of books a year? It's not that difficult. It's a couple books a week, like that's it. And so when you look at that though, he talked about this. He talked about the different stages of exhaustion and burnout. And it's a great book. You can still get copies here today. Probably doesn't read as well, right? It's a little bit different, but it's amazing. And it talked about this. And so that's where I started to learn that in Ayurveda, different body types and why I was relapsing, because I couldn't manage allostatic load. And here's why. So my body's depleted, worn down, run down. Now, whether it's summertime, I naturally feel a little bit better with the vitamin D, the sunshine, no more gray skies, seasonal affective disorders a little bit less, all those different things, great. I start to then, what do? Well, I work more, hang out with my friends at night. I'm working a job. I actually was working 2 jobs at the time and going to the gym. And then after like a month and a half or 2 of that, I would then burn out and get exhausted again. I get swollen glands. All these symptoms come back. Okay, here's what you need to know. You need some stress in life. There's a beautiful bell curve. So if you're not familiar with a bell curve is basically an upside down U. And on the left side of the bell curve, about, let's say 25% of the way up, you've got too little catecholamine production, too little glucocorticoids. Let's just call them stress hormones. So when you're producing too little stress, no energy. Now the middle 50%, the right amount of cortisol, the right amount of adrenaline. Great energy, good cardiovascular health, because you need that for cardiovascular health, strong endurance, good mood, all of those things. Then the last 25%, too much cortisol production, too much adrenaline. That's the anxiety, that's the overwhelm, that's the panic, all those things are there, right? The first 25% with the exhaustion, not enough cortisol production. That's where I was. That's Addisons disease, right? That's at its worst. That's apathy, like no emotion. I literally didn't even speak like days. I would just, no energy. And if people don't know what that's like, that is like unbelievably low energy. I remember just being at dinner so exhausted. I'm just trying to have enough energy to eat food. That's no exaggeration, to be able to eat. And I wasn't following conversations. When you have that much brain fog, it's debilitating. So that's why you need enough energy production, but not too much. So the perfect allostatic load is not the complete removal of sympathetic nervous system activity. It's not that. What it is not over or under exaggeration. Now, here's a second part to it. Allostatic load changes based on life stress and activities. So my level of work stress today would have crushed me 10 years ago and would have put me in the hospital 20 years ago. Now, not so bad. Why? I got used to being able to manage more and more projects, more and more deadlines, more and more stress, just to be honest with you. How did I do that? A little bit more each year. Just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Not more hours, just more stuff to do, right? More to oversee. That's how we manage that. What about the exercise? So what I used to do wrong is like I would get so sick, and then when my energy would come back after resting for a couple of weeks, I would then go to the gym for an hour and I would do a full body workout and just crush my body like 4 or 5 days a week. That's not what you should do. I teach this. It's called Graduated Exercise Protocol or Program. And you start by building your body back up. So you can go from walking to then cardiovascular to bodyweight workouts, then to more strenuous workouts, etc. But even just like if you're lifting weights, I would have behooved me, although I would never do that in my early 20s, right? Because there's all that ego and all that. I should have just went to the gym and did one set of all the exercises I wanted to do. That's it for the week. And then if I felt okay, the next week, I could have done 2 sets. And if I felt okay, the next week, then I could have gone to 3, gauging my inflammation levels and my recovery. And for most people, probably not 2 days in a row of weight training for a lot of people, if they're already not getting enough sleep and overstressed, et cetera. You can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, something like that, since that's a greater allostatic load on the body, right? More stress hormones being pushed out, more inflammation being created. So you have to understand is that all of life, right? Like happiness and feeling great in life is also levels of stress and energy. If you're exhausted, it's hard to be happy. It really is. You might be burnt out. You might be underwhelmed. You might have like nothing to look forward to. You might be depressed. You might have nothing that you are truly like looking forward to in life. And that's a hard place to be. And then the other is like, you have all these great things you want to do, and you want to do this, this, and this, and then you burn yourself out. You do it for a while, and then you burn out. So for many of us, it's finding the sweet spot, understanding that it's going to be this up and down undulation as we get stronger and stronger till ultimately we can do 2-3 times the amount we used to do maybe in 6 months to a year's time. You need to work up to it. So if you're looking to overcome fatigue, the best thing I can tell you is this. Find your baseline of what doesn't cause you fatigue. And if you're fatigued by even just doing nothing, you need to run, I would run the big 5, but if not, run at least the stress, mood, and metabolism test. You may literally not be producing enough cortisol. And if you're not producing enough cortisol, inflammation is overtaking your body. You probably have wild Th2 immune imbalances. You're sensitive to the whole outside world. You're sensitive to smells, chemicals, food sensitivities, outdoor allergens, etc. So we need to work on that, right? Because too little production, not good. Overproduction, you get burnt out. Then you end up in that first position with too little production, at least in the morning, the first half of the day, because then you can be wired at night. So my goal always with these shows is just to introduce you to these topics if they're new to you, and we're going to continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. But if you haven't read a copy of my Rain Barrel Effect, that book, it's literally completely free. You can find it at stephencabral.com. I pay for the book myself to be printed. All you do is pay for shipping. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. Again, you don't have to. I have 2,600 plus podcasts that you can go back into. You can type in fatigue at stephencabral.com/podcast and start to look at all the different elements of that. But if you don't understand allostatic load and you don't understand how you may relapse over and over and over, you're not yet getting how to become a little bit more calloused to the stress. And then over time, it's called a hermetic stressor. I have a podcast on that. Your body actually gets used to that. Then you can take the next step. And that's how you eventually rebound and rebuild your body. That's why now, so at 17 years old, that was my ultimate low. Now, I'm in my mid-40s, and I have more energy now. I do much better with even less sleep, even though I watch my sleep. But if I were to be on an overnight flight or get less sleep for whatever reason, I do so much better. It does not set me back. And so all of these things are achievable. I have no special talents whatsoever in the health-based department. If you look at my genetics, guarantee you it's probably worse than yours. Guarantee that with all my inflammation markers, poor detox, etc. But what you can do, though, is you can use the best of natural health-based principles in order to replace your deficiencies, remove your toxicities, lowering your stressors, emptying your rain barrel, and rebuilding your body. Hopefully today's show was helpful. Again, all of these show notes and takeaways are at stephencabral.com/2610. And as always, do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.